what we know from like our textbooks and what we learn at university, how much of that do you think gets built upon with experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. How much of that do we build upon with experience?
Yeah, like how much do you actually use of the textbooks as opposed to like what you've experienced?
I only revert back to it if I'm not sure about something. Which probably for first, second, third, fourth year would be a lot more often than what it is now.
Yeah.
A lot of what we do and what we say is supported by evidence, but also a lot of what we do is based on the client, and you can't often read that in a textbook.
Yeah.
So whilst there's this framework for guiding our education in terms of our clients and also our decision making, real life is completely different, and the real client is totally different. This person's going to do better with that way, this person's going to be a bit better with that intervention, this person will just completely fail.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure, like maybe one of those clients might completely fit a textbook, that this one won't.
Redirect the client, ask your questions in a better way, or identify from their story how you can utilize that to then get to the answer that you're seeking. I think it all comes down to your question. A lot of dietitians that we see and we're taught in university to ask as many open questions as possible, never ask a closed question. However, for clients that go off on tangents that run the consult basically based on their stories, because you've allowed them to do that through your open questioning, try some more closed questioning where it is defined yes and no's. You might need to ask a lot more of those, but as a result, you might actually get the information you're seeking and allow you to provide the recommendations and support to allow that client to achieve their goals.
I asked them what they didn't like or what their experience was, and I try to do a shit ton better than that, and I do the opposite. So if they've had a bad experience, I work with what the issues were, and then outside of that I always do better. And 100% of the time, if people had a bad experience with another dietitian, they're completely changed their mind after they start seeing me.
If you're working full-time while doing full-time uni, you're already up against it, and props to you, but it's identifying whether that's the right option for you. And if you feel like you're burning out, the work is the first thing that should go, so you can focus on the uni and get that tick. But yeah, work-life balance is very individual. I don't think anyone can directly say this is what you should do, but I would say focus more on what you're actually trying to achieve. You're trying to get a dietitian job at the end and be confident as a dietitian, be the best dietitian you can be, not get the best GPA. So just try and have that mind switch. Well, the first thing part of managing anyone is finding out what the expectations are first. So if it's not the first or second question you ask, it should be, is that what are you looking to get out of today? What are you looking to get out of seeing a dietitian? Then you know what the expectation is straight up. In terms of managing it, I think the question more comes from people going, oh, this person wants to lose 10 kilos in 2 weeks. How do I have that conversation? And all it is just talking honestly around what you think they can achieve, and that if they're going to achieve that, they're going to have to do these 5-10 things really, really well. But you would advise that maybe we start off with a smaller goal and achieve this first and then this next, and we'll get there in a little bit longer. So all it is just communication, find out what the expectation is, and then identify whether or not you can achieve it. If you don't feel comfortable, talk around what it's going to take to achieve it, to get them on side. Ask better questions. I've never come across a client that doesn't answer a question, and maybe they don't answer because they just don't completely understand. If you're talking about someone trying to hide something from you, I think that happens like 1% of the time versus people thinking that people are lying to them 50% of the time. I think it's all around just asking the question in a different way, asking it in a way that makes that client feel safe and heard and able to say what they really want to say. So I would just ask better questions.
So in terms of how you take measurements, you need to find your landmarks. So if you're looking at the correct anthropometric measurement for a waist circumference, it's the top of your client's hip bone, and then it is the last lower rib, and it's the midpoint between those two. So when you're working with generally people that are overweight, it can be really, really hard to actually find those bones and awkward. So I find the natural curve in the back, and that's a pretty easy landmark, and then it's the middle part to that. And then you generally then take the band around and take your tape around and measure it from there. I cut them off it might seem awkward, but I think it's well placed sometimes. And even if you just preface it in the way that you know, just trying to be most efficient with your time to get to the crux of the problem and give you the recommendations as fast as possible, I'll just have to be short and sharp with my questioning. So I would just do it that way. Either than that, I've also then just literally just gone, nah, sorry, and step on over top of them in definite Gary Vee style, and cut them off, because you know what you've got to say is more important than maybe listening to what they did with their grandkids on the weekend. So there's no dictated time frame to be eating regularly. I'm often getting people to eat less regularly when they're trying to lose weight, which goes against the norm for most people when they talk about weight loss. It's like, you need to be eating 6 times a day. You need to be eating more regularly to lose weight. I call bullshit on that. It's just trying to be strategic with when you eat. So eating when you're hungry. If you aren't hungry, we can deal with that later, but eat when you're hungry. I would say 3 times a day as a minimum maximum type thing. So if you need to have a snack, but ideally 3 times a day. Get that good time in between not eating. You need a good amount of not eating time versus eating time, and then you're more likely to be successful with weight loss than eating more regularly.